I walked through the meadow, feeling the sun on my face, and the tickle of the blades of grass on my bare feet. It wasn't the real sun, I knew that. If I concentrated, if I looked very hard, out of the corner of my eyes, I thought I could see a glimpse of reality behind it, the heartless, fluorescent light, acousted tiles that made up the ceiling. Or maybe the sun is a reality, and the dull white box, full of shells and the fantasy of bland concoction made to suit the humans. Dr. Nostril says there's no way we can ever tell for sure. It's just one of those things about the universe Ikes weren't meant to know. At least I knew where I was going. Danny had made it that one easy on me. The plum of black smoke rising from the crash site must have been visible from halfway across the store. I felt a twinge of worry in my chest. It was probably nothing. Danny had been in much worse crashes and barely been a scratch. Still, you never knew what might happen. Another twinge. This in my stomach reminds me that I hadn't gotten to eat any of the ice cream. You can do it, sunshine. I told myself firmly, you can get Danny. Make sure he's alright and get back way before that stuff melts. All you've got to do is pick up the pace. I felt something else, then a wave of cold dread. Something was wrong, very wrong. Why did it feel like this way? Dix was right. Danny probably wasn't in danger. He did crash all the time. Checking on him was more a matter of politeness than necessity. Something lurched in my chest. That's when I knew. My product. Something was happening to my product. Something bad. And it was happening right now. I'd never felt anything like it before. And yet it was crystal clear and straightforward. As the nutritional information on the side of my box. My Ike brain knew instinctively that there was a problem. I looked over at the smoke and bit my lip. I'm sorry, Danny. And I turned to run. By the time I reached the aisle where my raisins were kept, I was nearly in a blind panic, my heart beating wildly. I looked over at the smoke. I was so desperate. I almost ran smack into Miss Leonard's shoe. I hurried back away. The old manager was standing in the front of my shelf, taking down boxes and loading them onto a cart. I hadn't even realized he was still in the store. It was almost 1 a.m. He must have been in his office on the computer. It didn't make sense. This was the threat that set alarm bells ringing in my head. Usually it felt good when people took my raisins off the shelf. And Mr. Leonard was a sweet old man. He wouldn't even harm a fly unless it happened to land on his produce. So, why did it feel like I was going to be sick? Why were my ears dropping and my palms sweaty? He took down another box and cradled it gently in his hands. I heard him mutter something in his deep, human voice, and pricked up my ears. Poor sunshine, he said sadly. I'll miss seeing your face smiling down at me from the shelves, and the thoughts of all those lovely raisins going to waste just breaks my old heart in two. But a recall is a recall, I suppose, and I didn't hear the rest. The world seemed to fade away. All there was me and Mr. Leonard's, and that word, recall. For Ike's, it's a death sentence, but it wasn't real. It couldn't be. I told myself, pacing back and forth on the grass. Obviously, it was a mistake, a really stupid mistake. I wasn't dangerous. I was good. For you, I was full of iron. For crying out loud! Mr. Leonard loaded the last box onto the cart and began wheeling it towards the back. Well, I'm not going, I said to myself, crossing my arms. Jeepers, this is just silly. He'll figure it out soon enough and put me back on the shelf. I'm going to check on Danny now. Who knows what kind of trouble... The words died in my throat as I turned. The beautiful grass park was gone, pulled right from under my feet. The quaint old apartment where my neighbors lived had turned into hard steel shelves. Hello? I called up. I thought had been the apartment next to mine. Mr. Peanut? Shelley? Anyone? There was no answer. There was nobody there, just canisters of nuts, standing on the shelves in a silent line. Above me, the sun went out. Was this reality? Was this just Marketropolis really looked like, behind the grand shared illusions? Vast multi-tier metal walls, and a few ugly flickering lights far above? It didn't matter. It was my reality now. I always wondered why Ike's left without fuss when they were recalled. And now I knew why. If I stayed, I would be a ghost. I thought about desks, sitting there, waiting for someone who would never come back. He wouldn't eat without me. He was too old-fashioned for that. A real gentleman. He would just keep waiting, and the ice cream would melt. For some reason, it was that image, that mental image, of poor Dax, all dolled up in his formal tuxedo, sitting in front of a tureen of liquid ice cream, that set me off, tears rolling down my face. A Tedgy thought, the dark empty store. I wrapped myself in my arms. It was cold without the sun. If you just try your best, I reminded myself, then it'll always work out. I said it over and over, like a mantra, until by the time I climbed into the crate of sunshine raisins in the back of the office, I curled up on top of the box with my own face on it. I almost believed it.